We had some 49ers movement today. Wake up, honey. We got a signing. The San Francisco 49ers bring in a veteran cornerback who has a lot of starting experience. We will talk about Rock Ya-Sin, the guy who was drafted ahead of Debo Samuel in the 2019 NFL draft. We'll talk about the impact of the move. And that will lead us into a broader discussion that I think is right around the perfect time, considering that we've seen some additional moves being made, these last couple weeks, and really being able to identify the holes that remain on the current roster so we can start trying to conceptualize how the 49ers are going to attack the NFL draft coming up. So it'll be a little bit of Rock Ya-Sin, and then we will talk about the holes that remain on the roster and maybe talk about potential moves the 49ers could make to shore those up. While you're at it, drop an SDS in the chat, smash that like button, and let's get it. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it. All right. Shout out the gang. We see you. Justin, where's your Twitter account? Did you get banned? I went to your Twitter account. It's gone. I was like, what the hell, man? Shout out to SDS, though. We see the gang in here. Was Gouda. Oh, today I feel like the last week or so just kind of been chill, kind of relaxing, talking 49ers football, talking NFL draft, talking everything in between. 49ers had a local pro day yesterday. I guess we could talk about that too. But let's talk about the move that the 49ers made today. And then we'll also talk about the impact on the current roster and what else the 49ers need to do before the draft, what we expect them to do. Because if there's anything that we've learned about the San Francisco 49ers, they do not like any type of roster hole that is visible. They like to plug as many of those holes as they can before they head into the draft. So we'll take a look at all of that. But as we know, the San Francisco 49ers signed a cornerback today. They brought in Rock Ya-Sin. And to be honest, I don't mind this move. I don't mind it at all. Now, the reason why I don't mind it specifically is because it's absolutely zero risk. We haven't seen any of the numbers, so before I get too ahead of myself, I can't say that definitively, but I do believe that once we do see the numbers, it'll be a very manageable contract. It'll be, I looked at what he got with the Raiders, I believe it was the last team he played with. I think it was 1 year, $6 million. So I would have to imagine it's going to be less than that. And so basically what the 49ers got is they got the former 34th overall pick in the 2019 NFL draft. Again, this guy went ahead of Debo Samuel. He was drafted by the Colts ahead of Debo Samuel. And one of the things that I remember vividly from the 2019 Senior Bowl was Debo Samuel and Rock Ya-Sin just battling it out all week. For whatever reason, it just felt like no matter what, these guys would find themselves in these one-on-one matchups, just constantly battling. And Debo definitely got the upper hand on a good amount. Rock Ya-Sin won some himself, but Rock Ya-Sin had such a strong Senior Bowl that he just absolutely ascended up the draft boards, almost being a first-round draft pick. Now, the problem with Rock Ya-Sin is he hasn't been able to stay. Obviously, that's a red flag when we are looking at guys who are drafted high, is that he made it 3 years with the Colts, didn't even make it the full term of his rookie deal. They moved on. He went to the Raiders first. Then it was the Ravens, where I believe he made the $6 million. But hey, he's still 27 years old. There's still some upside there. And so once we see the figures come out, then I'll definitively be able to say that this is a zero risk move, because obviously if he doesn't pan out, the San Francisco 49ers just cut bait and they go on with their lives. So when looking at the move, I think it makes sense. Now the San Francisco 49ers have a decent stable of cornerbacks. They got a good amount right now. So when we look at the cornerbacks that are currently rostered on the San Francisco 49ers, we'll start with outside corners. You have Travarius Ward, Isaac Yiadom, who probably if the 49ers had to throw out a roster right now to go play a game, there's probably a good chance that Isaac Yiadom is starting. The guy that the 49ers signed from the Saints. Obviously, Deommodore Lenoir. You have Chase Lucas, who the 49ers signed, special teamer with the Detroit Lions. And then, of course, you have Ambry Thomas, Darrell Luter Jr., Samuel Womack, Kimon Hall, and then you add Rock Ya-Sin. So from the cornerback perspective, they've added 3 new cornerbacks through free agency. And hey, the 49ers have plugged that perceived hole from a perception of they have bodies in the room. You know, there's going to be some other positions where we're going to look at them and say, well, there's still a hole there. And that's part of the show. But at least from what it appears to be a numbers standpoint, they got a good amount of numbers at the cornerback position. So again, gives them the flexibility to kind of put on the poker face. You know, are they going to take a cornerback in the first round? Are they going to take a cornerback in the second round? Could they trade for a cornerback already on an NFL team? Get me Greg Newsome. I love Greg Newsome. He was a draft crush of mine coming out of Northwestern. Swag through the roof. When I was doing my scouting that particular year, I really liked Caleb Fairley. But Caleb, just so many injury problems. If he wasn't just dealing with so many injury concerns, I felt like he was the best natural athlete in that class. Right behind him was Greg Newsome. So if you could do that, I would be for it. But I do think the 49ers will still be active in that cornerback room in the draft. I just think now they have the numbers and it doesn't become a need necessarily where they have to take someone. They can pick and choose as the board falls, which I think is ideally where you want to be in the draft. You don't want to find yourself like, we need this position heading into this season. It's not where we want to take them, but if we wait, we're not going to get them. We got to reach for them. I don't like being in that position. I like having the stable full and being able to go, all right, we see this guy being a contributor. Let's go get him regardless of what position he is in. So the 49ers get Rock Ya-Sin. Again, last played with Baltimore. He also provides some special teams ability. He's predominantly an outside corner. I don't see him really having any slot versatility. He has not played in the slot, from what it appears, all that much throughout his career. So don't see him as a slot option, outside corner. And we'll see. We'll see how it goes down. But the 49ers got a new cornerback today. All right. Not bad. Not bad. How are you guys doing today, by the way? Didn't talk to you yesterday. Took much needed rest, recovery. As you guys know, it is brutal out here in these content creator streets. Taxing work. So your boy had to take a little bit of a what do they call it? A furlough? No. I don't know. Just relaxing. Just a vibe, I guess. I vibed yesterday. I think I made one video. Yay! It's off season. Hiatus. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sabbatical. That also works. Thank you very much. I'm not good with words. So you guys complete this thing, whatever this thing is. What's Callie saying? Says they could be out on Ambry. I think if there's anything that we saw from last year, there's a good chance that Ambry is not in the future plans for the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, dude, you go back to 2021 with Ambry and him having to play. They didn't want to play Ambry as a rookie, or Deommodore Lenoir for that fact. In 2021, they opted to go Drake Kirkpatrick and Josh Norman over those two guys. And then to the point where they had to put Ambry in. DeMeco Ryans did a phenomenal job of scheming around Ambry and putting Ambry in a position to be successful. And then Ambry comes down with the game sealing pick to send the 49ers to the playoffs against the Rams. And since that moment, Ambry just has gone the wrong way. Like you don't want to see regression with players, and it's the hard thing with Ambry because he seems like he has the traits to be good. It just doesn't feel like it's clicked. So, and if there's anything that we've seen, it appears that there doesn't seem to be a bright future with Ambry with the 49ers. Doesn't mean he can't latch on somewhere else, but just it doesn't feel like it bodes well for Ambry Thomas, because I mean, even at one point, like Deommodore Lenoir was, I remember it was the 2022 training camp. Deommodore Lenoir was buried on the depth chart, buried. I was like, man, Ivan did a show where we were talking about like surprise cuts, and I was like, dude, based on Deommodore Lenoir's like status in the depth chart, according to which group he's running with in training camp, I was like, I feel like Lenoir could be on the chopping block just because he was like in the third, fourth rotation on defense. And then that was the year where he eventually rose all the way to the top and became a starter and then has locked it down, and he's been a starter ever since. Now we look at Deommodore Lenoir as like, yeah, that's our guy. He's one of our guys at cornerback. It's Charvarius Ward, Deommodore Lenoir, stamped starter. I think collectively as a fan base, we all feel really good about Deommodore Lenoir and Charvarius Ward. We just know they need 3. And so that's kind of where our conversation has led us, is just trying to figure out who that is, who's in, who's out. Darrell Luter Jr. still has some upside, some promise. Samuel Womack has been an interesting one because Samuel Womack really did look like a guy who could contribute as a rookie, whether in the nickel or outside. And he didn't do anything last year. I know he was hurt, and he also shows promise as a special teamer. But I'm not out on Samuel Womack just yet. I think there's something there with a talent from him, talent wise. But hey, fun Samuel Womack story. I was in Vegas and I went to this really super dope shoe store. I think it's called, no, it wasn't Culture Kings. Some really super dope shoe store at the mall I think it was the Venetian. And I walk in and there's Spencer Burford and Darrell Luter Jr. It's like, oh, what's up, guys? Fancy seeing you here. I think that was a Friday before the Super Bowl. But they're low key vibing, just shopping for shoes. It's like, oh, what's up, guys? It's like, what you looking for? But so cornerback wise, they definitely have the bodies. So we'll see what they do if they address the position in the draft. We'll have to see. But I think heading into it, they're doing all right. They're doing all right as it stands now. Justin says my favorite corner in the draft is Quinyon Mitchell. He's flying up boards. Justin, where's your Twitter account? I went to look for Justin the other day, and I hope you didn't get banned. It's like, where's Justin's? Where's his account, man? So hopefully you didn't get banned. I don't know if Elon's banning these days. But hey, you never know. You never know. Let's see. I saw some other comment. Where did it go? I think it was about the pro day yesterday. What did it say? Oh, do I see them adding quarterback Kellen Mond for training camp? They could. They obviously got up close look at him. He has some time spent in the league. Again, if you're bringing in Kellen Mond, at best, you're looking at practice squad, camp arm, which they need. You look at the depth chart right now, it's Brock Purdy, Josh Dobbs, Brandon Allen. But there's no way I can see Kellen Mond beating out Brandon Allen. Like, not even a chance. I've gone to see Kellen Mond practice up close and personal twice. I got to watch him for an entire week at the Senior Bowl, and then I got to watch him for the entirety of joint practices versus the Minnesota Vikings. He is so bad. And I'm not trying to be mean. He is not a good quarterback. The how the Minnesota Vikings thought it was a good idea to take Kellen Mond in the 3rd round, I have no idea. And again, that's not a slight at the young man. Again, it's part of the evaluation process. We evaluate, we say what we think. That's just how it goes. It's a critical game. It's a dog eat dog world. Nothing personal by it. I'm sure he's a great kid. But I just remember watching him at the Senior Bowl all week in practice, and he was terrible. Just terrible. And I walked away thinking that there was some potential upside to Kellen Mond, like heading into the Senior Bowl. I left the Senior Bowl being like, not only should the 49ers not go anywhere near this guy, but I don't see how anyone could take him above the 6th round. To me, he's 7th to undrafted based on what I saw from him. And the Vikings took him in the 3rd, and he made it 1 year as a 3rd round draft pick. Wild. Absolutely wild. Andres says, we appreciate you, Brad. Keep up the great content. Hey, appreciate you guys checking in and vibing throughout this offseason. Yes, Josh Norman, my favorite cornerback for sure. Justin says, took a break from Twitter. I've been on Threads. Oh, you've been on Threads? I can't remember the last time I've been on Threads. Can't remember. My guy Jay says, Brad, what are your thoughts on Terrell Owens' son? Based on the coverage so far, I'm not going to pretend like I've been diving deep for pro day coverage, but you guys know I see everything. I feel like that was the only coverage was on him. And to be honest, he just looks like a guy. I didn't see anything that stood out to me from like let's try to break it down, like from a explosion standpoint. Yeah, again, I saw a couple clips, but what I saw in and out of his breaks, nothing. He looked kind of all over the place in regards to how he chopped down, broke out at the top of the route. He seemed to have decent hands, but I didn't see anything from like a route running standpoint. Obviously on air, no pads. But you can still pull traits. There was nothing traits wise that I was excited by. But hey, man, if you can get an invite to training camp, you get an invite to OTAs, I'm down. There's a rookie mini camp. Maybe he gets an invite. I got no problems with that. I didn't see anything that was like, oh, we need to draft this guy. But again, hey, sometimes all you need is an opportunity. Sometimes you might not look. One of the things that I had paid attention to as a player was that sometimes guys don't look all that great or intimidating without pads on. And then they just look like dudes. And then you throw the pads on and they're ballers. So, you never know. And also too, you see a bunch of guys without pads on who look the part, and then they move around and you're like, oh, I can't wait to see what this guy looks like with pads on. And you throw the pads on and you're like, what happened to him? So one of the things one of the things about football is you can look great, you know, with no pads on and all that stuff, or even with pads on, but pads are the great neutralizer. They really separate. They really separate the guys who can play versus who can't. It's one of the wilder things that I experienced as a football player is like you'd be in the gym all summer with these guys and like in the program before you actually got pads on, you're like, damn, that dude looks like a a stud. And then you put the pads on and just disappears. And you're like, what the hell, man? So we'll see. You never know. But again, I wasn't there, so I can't even give you like a quality evaluation of it. Um, can't give you a quality evaluation of it. But let's take a look at the rest of the 49ers kind of roster, how it's currently built out, where we think it could be heading, and some of the moves. I mean, when you look at this team, the holes are on the defensive side. The defense, which is the side of the football that struggled the most last year, and they lost the most. They lost their defensive coordinator, which again was part of the problem. They lost Eric Armstead. They lost Cleveland Farrell. They lost Chase Young. They lost what's his name? Randy Gregory, Javon Kinlaw. Drake Greenlaw's hurt. We don't know when he's going to be back. Oren Burks is out. And so when you're looking at the defense as a whole, like, yeah, they got Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott, they got Leonard Floyd, Yetur Gross Matos, and Drake Jackson will be coming back. He was dealing with an injury for a good portion of the year. Kalai Davis still unknown. Robert Beal Jr. still unknown. And then you have your typical like back end guys of like Austin Bryant, who to me is like just a practice squad guy. T.Y. McGill, I do like as a rotational guy. They obviously did bring back Kevin Gibbons. Spencer Wagee, he's an interesting prospect. Alex Barrett, I like him. He's been on the squad for like 4 years now. Just kind of in a practice squad role. He got some run late in the playoffs, but I think when we look at the defensive line, they filled the holes, they got bodies, but I do think that is definitely a position that they could still target in this draft. And specifically for me, it's defensive tackle, man. When you look at Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott, they can absolutely provide quality depth, I believe, but I think you need an alpha. Malik Collins is a little bit older. The Texans traded him for a 7th round draft pick for a reason. I would prefer to see the 49ers get a high end interior defensive tackle in the 1st or 2nd, even 3rd rounds. That's kind of where I'm looking at. I still think defensive tackle is a huge need. I look at this defensive line. I don't feel comfortable yet. Now that can obviously change, and listen to Rico. But that could change once we see them in training camp. But as it stands right now, I have a little bit of an uneasy feeling when it comes to the 49ers defensive line. Leonard Floyd, excited about that. Excited for that speed on the other side of Nick Bosa. Again, he's a little bit older, but boy, did he come in at a value, and we know what he can do. He can rush the passer. So if he can get me 10 sacks on the opposite side of Nick Bosa, that's a W. And how he wins is a W. Perfectly fine with that. Yetur Gross-Matos, is he a potential replacement for Eric Armstead? I think he could play in the 3 tech. I think he could play over the guard and survive quite well. So to me, YGM is a chess piece. You could use him as a edge, a base down edge setter in the run game. You bring in Leonard Floyd in pass rushing situations. You kick YGM to the 3 tech, and your pass rushing NASCAR unit is Floyd Hargrave, YGM, and Bosa. I would feel more comfortable about that. And then we'll see. We'll see after that. And then the great transition in this conversation that Callie asked, Brad, has the ship sailed on Drake Jackson? Listen, Drake Jackson has not living up to the expectation of what we thought we were. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. What we thought we were going to get out of him last season. I think when the San Francisco 49ers took him in the second round, pick 61, it was apparent to see on tape at USC that he was raw. And admittedly so. I think he had played outside linebacker, defensive end. They kind of had him all over the place, and he's still very young. So, admittedly, a raw player. But at the same time, Drake Jackson's birthday is tomorrow. Happy early birthday to Drake Jackson. Drake Jackson turns 23 tomorrow. I'm not out on Drake Jackson because Drake Jackson turns 23 tomorrow. And when the 49ers took him, I knew he was he was like a piece of clay that needed to be molded into the player, into a guy. So I believe right now what we're seeing is a very young player who has a ton of physical tools, but the finer details of the game are still coming to him. So I have patience with Drake. I think a lot of people saw Drake's season last year, myself included. You guys know, again, I'm not a big hot take guy, but if you pay attention to what I am saying, about week 3, I was like, the 49ers are in trouble at defensive end opposite side of Nick Bosa, just for the simple fact that Drake was really struggling. And what they had prior wasn't producing. And I could see the issues that were compounding by not having a quality, what the 49ers needed in terms of quality on the opposite side of Nick Bosa. And to me, I look at it like Drake just wasn't ready. I think they tried to put the chips into that basket that he would be ready, and he showed signs, but ultimately he just wasn't. So this is how I'm trying to view it. I'm a big fan of development. Like, as a player, I needed to develop. I was terrible. If you would have saw me my freshman year to sophomore year, the jump that I did was absolutely insane. So I'm a big fan of development, believing that if you put the right program, the right system, and the player is dedicated to improving, that you can see a 180 flip in a guy like Drake Jackson. So for me, I'm not out on Drake yet. But I think this next season becomes a make or break season for Drake because we know in the NFL there's just not a lot of there's not a lot of patience, there's not a lot of time. They don't like to wait around. You either got to contribute or they're finding your replacement. That's the cutthroat business of the NFL. So Drake has to contribute next season. If the 49ers believed that Drake was going to contribute, they wouldn't have paid Leonard Floyd what they paid him. They wouldn't have paid Yetur Gross-Matos what they paid him. Drake is in a make or break season next year. I'm not out on him yet because I do believe that he can flip it. But that takes a lot of work on his part. That takes it takes a lot. He's got to do it from a technical aspect. He's got to do it. But hey, 23 years old, man, there are players that are going to be drafted that are 23 years old. So he's just young. Got to give him some time. We'll see how it goes. Justin said, if they took Johnny Newton 31, Braylon Trice at 63, I'd be hyped. Dude, if they got that combo, that would be crazy. I've actually been talking to Braylon's defensive line trainer this draft process, and his little scouting report that he gave me on Trice was Trice is a baller, needs to develop in his technique a lot, but has a motor. So basically what he's saying is Trice has the ability and he has that relentless motor. He just has to refine and develop as a pass rusher at the NFL level, which again could be a quality option for the 49ers. And he could be a guy that could absolutely turn into something. He says no more D-line. More D-line. We need more D-line. I'm leading the charge of not enough D-line. We need more D-line. 100%. 100% more D-line. Got to do it. But so I think defensive tackles in play in the draft. I think edge is in play in the draft still. Both first and second and third round considerations and beyond. I think defensive tackle, edge, depends on the players, but I think they could be drafted in those rounds. The 49ers brought in 2 linebackers in Devondre Campbell and Ezekiel Turner. They re-signed Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, D. Winters, Jalen Graham, Curtis Robinson still here. So they got the bodies I think that they need at linebacker. But I think they could absolutely draft a linebacker too as well. So the defense, again, I mean, I think a lot of us, I know a lot of 49er fans look at the 49ers and like offense, more offense, get more offense, draft more offense, which I don't think means there won't. But to me, I think fixing that defense is a big time priority. And they could put some assets to it. When you look at the offense, they have every starter returning. So what you're looking for potentially is depth and starters of the future and maybe someone who can challenge on the offensive line. That's really what we're looking at. You need depth, starters of the future, and potentially an offensive line who can challenge. Tight end 2. Tight end 2 to me is a huge need. They need a tight end 2. Salbert, tight end 3 at best, but I prefer having Braden Willis as tight end 3. I still think they need to go tight end 2. I'm not sure this is a make or break year for Cameron Latu. I think we all know that. But when you look at the 49ers offensive line, got all their starters. Jalen Moore proved to me he deserves to be on the roster. He deserves to be the swing tackle. I had questions heading into last training camp. I thought he did a phenomenal job when he had to step in. I'm happy with Jalen Moore. I think Jalen Moore's good. This is a big camp for Spencer Burford, Nick Zakelj, Ben Bartch. Those guys are going to be competing like crazy. I think Feliciano starts day one as a starter, and they brought in Brandon Parker. They still got Luciano. And they signed Sebastian Gutierrez. They have 2 Gutierrez, right? Alfredo and Sebastian, I believe. So I think they really like Ben Bartch. I've heard Chris Forrester talk about Ben Bartch. The story behind the 49ers signing Ben Bartch was Chris Forrester had a guy in Jacksonville. There was some carryover, I think, with Ben Bartch. I don't know. He has some familiarity with Ben, and he got the tip that this guy's a quality offensive lineman. We just can't keep him. And the 49ers swooped him off their practice squad. They didn't have a roster spot for him. And so to me, I think Ben Bartch is definitely a 53-man candidate. What I'm really excited to see for Ben Bartch is what he does in training camp, because Alfredo wasn't signed back. That's crazy. I somehow did not see that. I'm going to go back to some of the other comments while I was yapping. What position did I play? I played center guard. I was a center guard combo. Left guard, center. Renardo Green, I have watched film on him. He looks pretty good. No one's talking about Renardo for some reason. Fun fact, Renardo and I have followed each other on Instagram for like 2 or 3 years. I don't know. Should I try to get him on the show? Yeah, just I don't know. I think he randomly I can't remember who followed who first. I either followed him or he followed me. Can't remember, but I've been keeping tabs on Renardo for a long time. Like, and yeah, no one's talking about him at all. And they should. He could be a guy that definitely is a top 100 player in the draft. But he could definitely squeak into the top 75. I think easily. Jackson Powers is falling for some reason. Jackson Powers Johnson was the first guy that we did a live film breakdown where you guys, and maybe we'll do this closer to the draft, where you guys just throw me some names. I'll pull up the tape. We'll watch the tape. I'll make a snap judgment off like 10 plays. But I've watched 2 games of Jackson Powers Johnson. Biggest takeaway from him is the power's there. But I don't see anything else that is like super I gotta have it. And my issue with power being his number one thing is that you can kind of sense that he's so used to being powerful, like at that level, that he will throw his shoulder into you. And if I'm an offensive line coach, I'm like, don't throw your shoulder into him. Like that's how you get beat. That's how to me, I look at that like when he drops the shoulder, the guys go flying. But if you drop the shoulder into Chris Jones, is he gonna go flying? If you drop the shoulder into Javon Hargrave, is he gonna go flying? If you drop the shoulder into DeForest Buckner, is he going flying? I look at it as a potential. Again, we're evaluating these guys at the college level, but we're evaluating how they will translate. And when I look at a guy who one of his best traits is throwing his shoulder into guys and they go flying, at college that looks cool and it's impressive. But my concern is how does that translate? Because if he goes to throw the shoulder and those guys don't move and they just go because he's not engaging, his body isn't squared up, and they just swipe him out of the way, that's where I get concerned. Um, my only concerns with him were kind of like he's not super fast to the second level. So that could present a challenge. I think he's a good center. I do. I don't know if I'm buying it like I don't know if I'm I like what he brings to the table, but I think and again, I'm more looking for technical advanced guys. That's always been what I'm looking to scout. I'm looking for technique over power. Um, I'll be the first to tell you that. It's been my philosophy for the most part for the last better part of a decade when it comes to scouting offensive line. I'm always looking for technique over power. If you can find both, if you can find the technical power, then you're cooking. Um, but with JPJ, I just see a lot of power. I don't see a whole lot of technique. I don't see a whole lot of speed. That scares me and how it's going to translate. So I could potentially see teams maybe thinking that or thinking like, well, Creed Humphrey was kind of built that way, and Creed Humphrey has had a lot of success in the NFL. So for me, JPJ reminds me of Creed Humphrey, um, which I think is a good comp. That means he could be a 10-year starter in this league. Um, but I think you're talking more of a value game at center. Um, and if you don't have a center with elite traits or tools, don't take him in the first. And I'm a former center myself. I'd love to see all the centers go in the first round. But if you don't have elite tools or traits as a center, you can't go in the first. Like if you're missing some category as a center, I feel like that that knocks you down. So I don't know if that's how maybe some people are perceiving him or not. I'm not sure. Um, but as it stands right now, I still have Barton over JPJ. Um, but again, that's because from the way I scout center archetypes, I'm looking for technical abilities, speed, and if you have the requisite size and you have the speed, I think you can counter any defensive tackle. There's a reason why. There's a reason why um, Daniel Brunskill owned Aaron Donald. The reason why Daniel Brunskill owned Aaron Donald was speed, technique. Not because he was big, not because he was super strong. The reason why we call Daniel Brunskill Aaron Donald's daddy is because of first step quickness and explosion and technique. That's why. And there aren't a lot of offensive linemen like Daniel Brunskill in the league. So that's why it was an anomaly of why did this smaller, powerful defensive tackle who destroyed everyone struggle with Daniel Brunskill? It's the same theory that I apply to these draft evaluations. It's the same reason why that became a bit, is because I was all over it. I recognize when smaller, undersized offensive linemen, but are faster, technically sound, first step get off, you can neutralize power with speed and technique. So I'm not, obviously, if you can have the both, if you can have all the things, if you can have all the traits, all the physical tools, all of it, and in that into one player, then you're cooking. But again, that's just how I evaluate. And that might be more personal to myself. But yeah, man. I watched the tape. I still felt like I came away watching JPJ still liking Barton a lot better, because I think he's significantly more technically advanced than JPJ. But again, you're running gap scheme. JPJ feels like hand glove fit. You're running outside zone. Barton feels like hand glove fit. So it also could be scheme dependent as well. Justin says, did you ever watch Jamari Thrash? Feel like his route running with Ayuk would be insane. I started to, and I don't know what happened. I got distracted. But I need to do more. I need to start. I feel like I'm back in college, and I need to start crunching for a test. I need to watch more. I need to watch more. That's the hard part about like genuinely trying to scout is I can't scout off of highlights. I can pull traits off of highlights. I can't scout off of highlights. We can pull traits. This is the thing with an evaluation process. I can gain value from anything a player does because it's all about how you contextualize it. I can contextualize a workout. I can contextualize players running routes against air. I can contextualize one-on-ones with no pads. And every step along the way, you can find value in each one of those levels all the way up to games, practice with no pads, running on air. You can contextualize it all. So, but I'm trying to get to the level of like scouting. Like I need to watch because I've said it before and I'll say it again and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. The greatest measure of a player is his ability to be consistent. Anyone can be great on one rep. Anyone could be great in one game. Anyone could be great sometimes for a couple games. But you really have to be able to find the issues in consistency and who's consistent, who's not, who you can project, who you can't project. And I don't know. I feel like I've found a sweet spot for that. Thoughts on Tip? Tip is a guy that I'm actually trying to he's on my list, like my short list of scouting. First impression of Tip was at the combine when he obliterated the bag drills. And you could immediately see that he was by far and away the best blocker on the field out of that tight end group. And anything that you've heard, I've seen some cut ups. Um, I haven't done the full study, but my initial thoughts on Tip Ryman is yes. Yes. And I won't say names. I won't say names, but a very prominent 49er uh asked me if I also checked out Tip Ryman. So yeah, Tip is definitely a guy you want to keep your eye on. Tip is definitely a guy who's going to be way higher on NFL boards than media boards because he's predominantly a blocker. And as we know, the average draft pundit doesn't value blocking all that much. Depending, that's per case by case situation. But Tip is definitely a guy that the 49er fans should keep their eye on 100%. I'm just super late at getting into the study on him, but what I've seen from a first impression standpoint at the combine, I talked to Tip also too. Tip, I think Tip had one of the more hilarious. Let me double check. I think Tip had one of the more hilarious interviews at the combine. I think he was one of the guys who talked about pigeons being fake and not real. Let me double check. I'm pretty sure that was Tip. Pretty sure.
That's hard to follow up. But how would you describe yourself as a blocker? Being able to kick in line. Have you met with the 49ers by chance? And what would it be like?
Sorry, I'm watching my own interview.
Oh, that'd be sweet. I don't remember meeting with him, but that'd be so awesome. I've watched his tape a ton. I like him 100%. Who are you? Okay. So you think Will scored 100 points? You never know.
Sorry. So I talked to Tip. He said that he doesn't remember meeting with the 49ers. Smokescreen, potentially. So we'll see. We can trade Ayuk for the 13th pick. We could draft. Who's at 13? Who's at 13? Listen, I have no idea what's going on with Brandon Ayuk. I'm not going to pretend like I know. I just don't feel good about the situation. A big part of what I do is off vibes. And if you're explaining to someone like, oh, how do you evaluate situations? How do you evaluate football players? How do you evaluate talent? How do you evaluate? How do you? And a big part of the way I evaluate is off vibes. And if you tell that to someone, they're like, well, how do I do that? How do I don't know. It's off the vibes I get. I don't know, man. I don't know. I know the most logically the most likely outcome is that he remains a Niner, logically. But the vibes just feel off. I don't know. You guys know I mess with BA heavy. That's my guy. I want the best for BA, whether that's with the Niners or with someone else. But also part of this is just trying to like figure out like what is actually happening. You know, are the 49ers going to pay him? He's going to get 25, 26. I've been saying that 26, 28 is kind of the range. I would say it's 25, 26 right now. And I'm curious, Jason, because you're super good with this cap stuff. Does that change if not if, when Justin Jefferson becomes the highest paid wide receiver ever at about 35 million per year? Then CeeDee Lamb's right behind him about 32, 33. I feel like that number shifts up. I feel like right now it's 25, 26. I feel like once those two guys get paid, it's minimum 26, 28, and might even creep beyond 28 if you wait for those guys to get paid. Because if there's anything that we know about these contracts is the market is the market. The market dictates what these guys get paid. That's why they're very adamant on getting the highest amount, because it not only helps them personally, but it helps everyone behind them. And so if JJ gets paid, if Lamb gets paid, that yesterday's price is not today's price, and that to me isn't a good thing for the 49ers in multiple areas. In paying BA, like obviously they're going to have to pay a high amount for BA, but that makes it more, which he's deserving of, but because that's the market. But then it's like, does that create more of a disconnect? Does that create more of a disconnect between what the 49ers really want to pay versus what the market says? Because the 49ers could theoretically say, we actually aren't going to give you a contract extension, and we're going to make you play at 14.1. And that just feels gross. That feels gross. Like, I just try to put myself in that situation of like being in like a work environment. Obviously, the NFL is no other work environment. It's so that's not the comparison. But it's just trying to put yourself in that comparison from an emotional standpoint of you see your colleagues get the sickest raises, like just they double their income, and then your manager gets to you and you're like, yeah, well, we appreciate everything you've done. You've really worked your tail off. You've done everything that we've asked of you. You've gone above and beyond. We want to keep you right here, even though we know your worth up here. We're gonna keep you right here. I would be like, double birds. I'm out of here then. Like, who's gonna pay me if it ain't you? Because I just feel like if you see JJ get 35 and then you try to set it up to make Ayuk play at 14, that is crazy to me. Do I think BA is in the same like playing field as those two? Not necessarily, because you get paid off production and their production is insane, but he's still that quality of a wide receiver. He's still that competent of a wide receiver that he deserves to be discussed with JJ, with CD. They're in the same draft class. He deserves to be a part of like in that conversation. I don't think he would get paid the same based on production, but he deserves to be in that conversation. So that's where I'm getting like an ick feeling about this. I get an ick. I don't feel good. The vibes. No, we're not discussing VA. Did he tweet something? We're not talking. We're just talking. We're talking vibes. I'm talking vibes. Talking vibes. Looking at the situation. I don't like the vibes, to be honest. I'm hopeful that BA stays, obviously from the perspective of a 49ers fan. But just not the vibes. Vibes aren't great. Hopefully that changes. We've seen it change before. And all that stuff. But I think I'm realizing like the part of the off season when the 49ers have to pay someone just kind of sucks, man. Like it's so stressful. Do you guys remember how stressed we were about Nick Bosa last year? Like we were stressing. That holdout was crazy. John Lynch was stressing. John Lynch said he's John Lynch was stressing. Oh, dude. Like, and I get it, man. This is a cutthroat business, and you got to do what you got to do. But that's why, man. These next 2 weeks, I think, are huge, because we have to get through the draft. We have to get through the draft. If we get through the draft, the stress levels go down immensely. But just getting closer to the draft, you got hey, surprise, not Kendrick Bourne recruiting BA, Jaden Daniels talking about his dog BA, Malik Neighbors saying that Jaden Daniels about to link up with his old homie, which we might be able to connect the dots. It really feeling like Jaden is going to go to the Patriots. I don't know, man. I don't know. And I don't fault BA for anything. I don't fault BA for anything, man. Like I think that's part of that's part of the hard conversation to have with like fans about the whole contract negotiations is because I think we have a hard time trying to associate with how they feel because they're making millions of dollars. We're like, man, can I just get one of those? Can I get one M? I'll be good. we're like, can we get one M? Like, if I got one M, that's life-changing money, even in California where they're going to take half of it. Still life-changing money. And so I think fans have a really hard time being like, "Oh, he's complaining about paying a 14 million? Like, oh, give me a break." It's like that's not the point. It's not the point. You get what you should get what you're valued at, right? You should get where your value and what the market dictates. And the market is dictating that 14 million for BA is underpaid significantly. And that's where this feels like that's kind of stemming from. Right? Like I don't know. I think fans just have a hard time of kind of like associating that of the challenge of, you know, potentially having to play on a 1 year contract that doesn't, it's not a long term guarantee. Uh, then because of that, you have the potential of getting franchise tagged the year after that, which then kind of puts you back into this situation. You know what I'm saying? Uh, yeah. I just don't like the vibes. It could change. We didn't like the vibes with Kittle. We didn't like the vibes with Bosa. We didn't like the vibes with Debo. All of them got paid. All of them still here. So that's the important thing. I think that, I'm just trying to remind myself, just, yeah, the vibes might not be great right now, but hopefully the vibes will be great when the season starts. It's really how we have to look at it. But also in the meantime, just not being naive to the fact that anything can happen, right? Like anything can happen. We know the 49ers are they have some challenges uh with the roster construction and building, you know, leading up in the future, and that has to be considered in this. So, it's not easy, which again presents some of the anxiety. It's hard for the 49ers, it's hard for BA, it's hard for both sides. And then if CD and JJ get paid, I feel like that's where I start to get concerned, but hopefully that's not the case. I'm just thinking out loud. I'm sharing my honest opinions with you guys, my honest thoughts. Because as you guys know, I have ADHD, so I just sit and spin on things and overanalyze and just overthink situations. So I can take one situation and run it through a process of every imaginable outcome. And then my mind has to decide which one's the most likely. And then my mind's like, well, we got to rank them in regards to which is most likely to which is less likely. And it's like, if I'm ranking right now the range of outcomes of this situation, one of the ranges of outcomes is that they don't come to an agreement. And the 49ers can't afford it. I don't know whatever the situation is to reach that point, but then they trade. So it's the life. Jason says, I do the same, Brad. I have OCD. I have signs of ADD, ADHD. I overanalyze things. I go crazy when it comes to the cap, whether current year or future year. That's the thing with ADHD, man. It's a superpower and a curse at the same time. It's the weirdest thing. It's the weirdest thing, man. You got to figure out how to harness it. You got to figure out how to use it, and not let it derail you. ADHD is wild. I honestly don't know if I could do what I do if I didn't have ADHD, but it also presents a ton of challenges at the same time. ADHD is wild. Shout out to all you guys who have any forms of ADHD. Respect to you, because I know how challenging life can be with ADHD. Jeez, dude. Shout out all my people dealing with mental health check. Hopefully you guys are doing okay. Hopefully everyone's good. And hopefully we get BA paid. We put all this behind us. We're all happy again. We're all not stressing out about the Super Bowl. Shout out my people, man. Don't let anyone act like they got it all figured out. Everyone's dealing with something, man. Everyone's dealing with something, one way or the other. We're all trying. We're all trying to survive. My guy says, I feel like I have ADHD. I think I need to have it diagnosed. Try Adderall or something. I would say, honestly, if you're really trying to self diagnose, drink a fat cup of coffee and see what happens to you. For me, caffeine centers me. It like it it channels. It allows me to focus. It allows me to collect my thoughts. So if you drink a ton of caffeine and you are just laser focused and you're not fidgeting with like a ton of anxiety. No, you might fidget with a ton of anxiety the first couple times you drink coffee if you don't drink coffee. Caffeine makes you sleepy. You have ADHD, my friend. We're handing out we're handing out ADHD diagnoses here on the SF9ers. If caffeine has any effect to you outside of making you extremely hyper and like active, if it has a calming effect in any sense, whether focus or anything like that, to me, that's the sign that you absolutely have ADHD or ADD, a form of it. That's basically why they give you speed. That's what Adderall is. Adderall is speed. It's the speed. The speed has a different effect on your brain. And so where others who don't have ADHD, they take it, they're all hyped and they're like on an upper. But if you have ADHD and you take it, you're laser focused, calm, quiet, all that good stuff. All that good stuff. Mental health hour here on the SF9ers. I'm always down for a good mental health conversation, by the way. I think mental health is very important. I think mental health is very important. I also think destigmatizing ADHD is also a good thing because I do believe ADHD can be a superpower, but you have to figure it out. You have to figure out how to manage it. You have to figure out how to control it. Like one thing that I've realized that I have a really hard time controlling is I have a hard time controlling words and numbers. For whatever I will literally look at something I've written and reread it 4 times, and my brain will literally pick up the word that isn't there that I've omitted, but it's triggered in my brain, and then I'll post something and I'll be like, "Wait, what did I just type? I reread this 15 times." And I reread it exactly like how I intended it to be, and then I catch it later. I'm like, "Well, that's terrible." That's why I can't be a writer. Like, I can't. Yeah, I have a hard time with statistical analysis. My brain just doesn't process those things. I can process film. I can process tape. You throw some tape in front of me. Oh yeah, we cooking, baby. You give me something visual, we're cooking. You give me some vibes. Yeah, we're cooking off vibes, baby. We'll make it work in other ways. Yes. I think you can be overstimulated by noise. So if you're trying to focus on something and you're using all your brain power to focus, and a noise happens, it can send a jolt of anxiety through your body because you're it takes, I don't think people understand how much energy it takes for people to focus when you have ADHD, and when you put all that energy into focusing, and something like from a noise standpoint can absolutely overstimulate you 100%. So glad we can open up about our mentals, what we're all dealing with. And like I said, I'm a big fan of destigmatizing ADHD, ADD, all that stuff. All that stuff. You just got to figure out how to, you got to, just like anything in life, you got to figure it out, right? You got to figure out the workarounds where you need workarounds. And if you have that mentality and you have that mindset, I think you can absolutely use ADHD to your benefit. There will always be drawbacks. There's always going to be challenges. You're always going to you're always going to forget things. You're always going to get distracted by things. That's all there's some things that will never change, but you can figure out how to tap into it and use it to your benefit. It's the only way I can able to build simultaneously 7 social platforms, all requiring different content and doing it all at the same time. If I didn't have ADHD, what are we doing? I feel like that would be very challenging. But ADHD does present a lot of challenges on the flip side as well. So I get it. I get it. Yes. Boom. Meditation and keeping busy with things you love to do are absolutely crucial in developing this gift. Bar. 100%. Keep busy with things you love. That's it. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I love this. I genuinely love it. Anyone with ADHD knows that doing anything that you don't want to do or don't like is it's a literal roadblock in your brain when you have ADHD. So you got to find the things that you like, got to find the things you love, and then boom, you find your superpower, and then the gift. I love that. That's a bar for sure. To doing it with passion, even with all the challenges. Hey, appreciate that, my guy. And sounds like we've diagnosed you as well with with ADHD. I wouldn't say just go out and buy Adderall off the street or anything like that, but I don't take Adderall. Heavily against medication for ADHD. Heavily against. So I stopped taking it. I was on Adderall from like 3rd grade to freshman year in high school. Heavily against it. It's just something I think you gotta learn to deal with. Adderall is simply it's not a cure. It's not gonna. It's a masking agent. It's a masking agent. So shout out to all you guys. We went from roster building, draft, Ayuk, ADHD. You know the vibes. That's how ADHD works. We start one way, we end somewhere where you did not anticipate. The beauty of ADHD. And if you are sitting here watching this show and you don't have ADHD at all, shout out to you, because I would imagine you would have left by now. You're like, what are these crazy mother talking about? Like, They're like, oh, we found the 49ers channel. Oh, I love it. I'm here for it though. Embrace it, baby. Embrace what you got. So we vibe no matter what. Shout out to you guys. Thank you for tapping in. All that good stuff. We'll be back. What's tomorrow? Friday. We'll be back tomorrow. More 49ers content. All that good stuff. Appreciate you all. I'm out of here for now. Peace. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see you.